Taxes are the only certainty. Will 20% of people have society? And I have made it on my own in this world. Will nothing to get a turn around a 2-year-old. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation with my self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with my self-preservation. Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation with my self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with my self-preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start my own nation with my self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with my self-preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And welcome, pop pickers, to yet another edition of Political Unmuted. I have been such a failure because I forgot last week to say that it was the 39th episode, which is 3/4 of a year. So everybody, we're 1 week. This is week 40. We are it's our Ruby edition, and we are 1 week past 3/4 of a year since we started. It is so good to see you, everybody. And before I introduce you to the dream team, I see that Graham Marsh is here. He will be delighted to know that his question that we addressed last week got me famous in East Durham, but deeply criticised in East Durham. Because you remember that Graham's question was, would you go for the party or the person? And sort of the people of East Durham just did not seem to be able to get their heads around the idea that somebody in the Labour Party would believe that we go for the party. This was, they did get cross about it. And so I became very, very famous in East Durham, which is what all anybody could want. But here's something: if you're one of those East Durham people listening in to try and get a soundbite that you can get cross about, this is going to upset you terribly. The Tories, they have a group system too. And not just the Tories, the Lib Dems. But this is the thing that's going to make your heads explode in seeing. So the independents have groups too. There's an independent, Derwent side independent group. And sort of they tend to fall out more. And they're on top of the rules, but sort of everybody does it. Oh dear. So anyway, thank you for the fame. We're just lapping it up. And don't forget, share it with all your friends and get them to listen to the show. And Graham Marsh, thank you for making me so famous. Absolutely. Wonderful question, by the way. More like that when sort of be prepared. Then it's gone straight from me dribbling on to meeting the team. Say hello to them. Paul, hello, hello.
Hello.
All right. Stuart, hello, hello.
How are you doing?
How's the campaign going?
Swimmingly. Yeah, excellent.
You seem to be just about the most organised person in sort of Sedgefield CLP.
Well, it's because it's a one candidate ward, isn't it? I'm the boss.
Got to do the biz. So Samantha, how's your campaign going?
Yes, we've got 3 candidates, so it's slightly more tricky. However, obviously, I do get on with them very well, so that helps. Busy, yes, stuffing envelopes, and I've just signed off my election address leaflet, so very exciting. And I got Laura to endorse me.
So, when you get it printed off, you must bring it in and show it to us. We'll be very, very excited. The people of Shildon are stupid if they don't. So I will say this: if you crop that, you can get a real damning soundbite. The people of Shildon are stupid if they don't elect you. Okay, and finally, hiya, Laura. It's so lovely.
Hello.
How is life treating you, Laura?
It's good. It's just full. Very, very busy as usual.
The tiredest person on God's earth. You're doing more than any other human being I know. Thank you so much. And we have a guest today, everybody. Mia, hiya.
Hello.
It's welcome to the show. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah.
Well, Mia's going to join us because she's going to ask the first question, the big story question, and sort of Mia's been on before, you know her, but it's great to see her. Okay, let's without more ado.
A lot of energy.
First, my fault. Just sort of, and is music going, Paul?
Music's finished, yeah. The guests can't hear the music today, but I can, so kind of worked.
A normal professionalism.
This is why I'm sort of doing a rubbish, what do you call a conductor?
It's moment of the week, as I was telling Mia a moment ago. And does anybody want to go first with their moment of the week?
I will.
Paul.
Really, really sad to say that someone who loads of people will know and love, Nigel Todd, he died over the weekend, and it's a really sad time for so many people. He was on Newcastle City Council for many, many years. He's done amazing work in education. That's how I know him, actually, because he's the chair of he was the chair of the Socialist Educational Association for the North East. He basically set that entire branch up by himself, and I want to pay tribute to him. He was such a nice man, such a caring man, and someone to aspire to be, and I think he'll be really, really greatly missed. And I've seen outpourings of grief from people, and along with really positive tributes about what a wonderful man he was. And I can see in the comments that that people are saying that as well. So all my love to his family. He was such a lovely man, and all those people who cared about him as well. So here's to Nigel Todd.
Somebody who clearly made a difference with his life. Sam, you're directly beneath the poll on my screen. Moment of the week.
Yeah, so because I've been sorting out my election leaflets, I've been looking through old campaign photos to use because obviously I've got no photos of me near anyone over the last year. And I found this really gritty looking one where I'm not smiling and I'm looking really moody. And my friend photoshopped it into like an episode preview of Vera on the ITV Hub, and he's made me an episode synopsis about how I'm like helping Vera track down a train. So that made me laugh today. A nice bit of light-hearted. Leanne says she can't hear me. If you can't hear me in the comments, let us know.
So your voice is a bit distinct, actually.
There's echoes going on, but you should be fine. Everything looks fine.
Yes, Anthony Riley can hear Sam.
Woo. I don't know what to do.
You've got to be so careful. People seem to have no sense of humour nowadays at all, do they, Sam? Sort of.
It's tricky. It is tricky. I mean,
parody.
You've got to be respectful, but also at times I think it helps to not take yourself too seriously.
No. I'm going to go Laura Daly. Moment of the week.
Well, I'm not sure if it should be being asked to to endorse somebody now. That feels like a big deal. I had so many this week. There's been a lot going on. I think I'm just going to go for Socialist Sunday was a really, really big day for me. There was like 2 amazing events that I was involved in. One of them was the political education project session on women's oppression, which was really, the women on that panel were so impressive. They were all amazing, and I was lucky enough to speak at that, and I met Maxine Peake, so like totally fangirled about that. And then it's short immediately after, it was the Northeast Against Racism's event on misogyny and racism, and that was really powerful as well. And it really, it gave us sort of a bit of energy back about the whole movement. I'd been feeling a bit rubbish and a bit down, and I was getting really angry in this meeting and really like, yeah, we should do something about this. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I was really honoured to be part of both of them. And I'm just ready to keep this fight going now. So it was brilliant.
It's outrageous. And by the way, Graham Marsh has just made a very outrageous comment, and he says that looking lovely ladies, I'm sorry, that is just a huge no-no. I expect now that's just an appearanceist comment, and sort of I expect Graham a comment that the gentleman are looking sort of hirsute, and that word means hairy, and the sort of I expect that you've got to be we do gender balance on here. So
me and you, John, we're kind of looking like sort of a time warp Bee Gees, you know, like, so you're the Bee Gees now, and I'm the Bee Gees then. So
I tell you what,
sorry.
By the time the election comes, people won't be able to see me. I'm just disappearing underneath it. Pray God they open the hairdresser soon. Laura, I am continually ashamed of myself because I just know you as Laura, and sort of you are so important regionally as a woman's representative, and I just keep taken by surprise. And I just apologise to you because I think, my God, she's on there, and of course you're on there. So it's you're just too humble. Anyway, sort of congrats. I say the other thing that struck me about it, then we're talking too long, but the other thing that strikes me about it is that at one time Political Unmuted was the big show on Socialist Think Tank. My God, it's not now. You look at some of the viewing figures, you're getting into the 2000s for some of the things that you're putting on. You must be exhausting yourself with that kind of work rate. But Socialist Think Tank, everybody, I mean, it's just massive, sort of in the northeast, sort of even in Seaham, sort of it's big in Seaham, sort of. So, Stuart, moment of the week.
This is going to seem relatively mundane, but I got my nomination forms through to electoral services, and they went through without issue. So that's the big thing for me this week.
Ours go up
That's not
on
mundane.
Tuesday, which is a panic because it only gives you if something's wrong, it only gives you 2 days to put it right. And we're all going all exactly the same, and we're all going together. So if one's wrong, there'll be about 20 that's wrong. And there'll be this mass panic over Newton Aycliffe, sort of. But I wouldn't have expected any less of you, Stuart, the most organised man. And it's the same with the people. Here's something to crop people. The people of Children would be stupid if they didn't elect you. Well done. Thank you so much. Anyway, absolutely on time. Thank you for those moments of the week. And it's time for...
Now it's time for the big story.
Thank you. The reason for this is that we can't hear it. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ask Mia to pose her question, and we'll see what the team thinks. We can have a little discussion about it, and then I'm going to ask Mia to talk about it. Major question as we prepare for World Autism Week next week. Hi, Mia. You're so welcome. Would you like to pose your question, please?
Hi, yes. A lot of energy is put into getting autistic people to adapt to a neurotypical society. But should we be asking how society can adapt more to autistic people?
I love that question, Mia. Thank you so much. A lot of energy is put into getting autistic people to adapt to a neurotypical society, but shouldn't we be asking society to adapt more to autistic people? Sam's going to lead off on this. Sam.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll start by saying I'm not autistic, as in I don't have a diagnosis of any neurotypical differences, but I have 2 autistic children. I'm married to a man who we all believe is autistic, and I've got lots of historical family members going way back who had traits that you would now look at them and go, perhaps they've got ADHD, autism, or some other neurotypical difference. So I'm not talking over anyone. This is just my opinion from my point of view. I totally agree with the question posed. I certainly believe that people are disabled by society, and especially when you talk about people with ADHD and autism and other neurological differences, ways of interpreting the world. We just live in a society that is built by neurotypical people for neurotypical people, and there's very little leeway, and even like little things. So people would say that they don't have any bigotry towards people with autism, but they still will say things about someone looking shifty, make fun of somebody for having what they consider to be strange eating habits, or fixations on things that they don't understand. And that's still quite common in our society, for people to look down on people and make people feel awkward for those things. So we really need to look at that, and look at how we ostracize people for these things. When people aren't hurting anyone, just let them get on. If my husband wants to be able to recite the entire soundtrack from all of the Star Wars movies, including the alien languages and the sound effects, he's not hurting anyone. Let him get on with it, and it brings him joy. So who is anybody to try and shame somebody or disrespect somebody for doing those things? As a parent of autistic children, the support is just not there. It's just not available. If we look at my eldest, he is now 9. He's had his autism diagnosis since he was 5. And since that, for the last 4 years, and almost his entire primary school career, his teachers have just been left to get on and guess how best to help him, and it's been a very trial and error approach, and that has now affected his whole primary education. There is no telling what he could have achieved if he had support as soon as his diagnosis was put in place. And I know of people with ADHD, autism, dyspraxia, dyslexia, who don't get diagnosed until adulthood. And so that's a limiting factor on people being able to live a flourishing and enjoyable life. And I think that we really need to look how we remove those barriers, because they are unnecessary barriers that we can overcome as a society.
Thank you very much indeed, and so helpful. Somebody's commented on ADHD being a fictitious disease. I mean, I was Senko at my school for a long, now this is many years ago, mine, so I may be out of date, but when I was the Senko, the special needs coordinator, ADHD is about behavior. And if you have certain behaviors in two settings, home and school would be two settings, then you get a diagnosis of ADHD. It doesn't attempt to define itself as a disease. It's a certain set of behaviors. Autism is very difficult. Autism is how your brain's wired up. And sort of that's why we say it's neuroatypical. It's not neurotypical. Your brain is wired up slightly differently to other people's, and perhaps individually to you, and that's how it's different from ADHD. But coming back to the question, Paul, have you got any thoughts on this question? Sort of a lot of energy is put into getting autistic people to adapt. Should we be adapting to autistic people?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, we should be adapting. How we adapt is probably, it's a difficult thing, and I think people find it really challenging. If you're not neurodiverse, if you're neurotypical, whatever that means, because everyone's on everyone's on a spectrum, and I don't like to think of it as being box, this is you forever. We're all on spectrums of different forms of neurodiversity. However, those people who are societally the most neurotypical, I suppose, in the way we think of it, it's quite scary for those people to try and think of doing things in a different way. But imagine how scary it is if everything is in an unusual way and everything's set out in a way that doesn't help you, that isn't suited to you. So I definitely think that the people who society is more geared up towards should be making the changes necessary in order to try and help everyone be equal. However, there's a societal issue here that, whatever aspect you're talking about, whether that's like rich people and poor people, or whether this is people who are born in one country or another, the people who have things the most comfortable don't understand how difficult it is for other people, and few of them try to understand. Few of them try to make that difference and try to enhance someone else's experience of life. And surely that's what it's about, isn't it? Surely as human beings, as Homo sapiens, surely the idea is to collaborate and make everyone's life better, not just hoard everything for yourself. So I would definitely say that we need to make adaptations and look at the wonderful things that people do. I'm not quite sure. There's one of the ways that's not meant to be said, with whether that's people with autism or autistic people. I'm not sure which way around that is, so I'm really sorry if I get that wrong. But people who are on the autistic spectrum, who have a high level of autism, they have achieved such wonderful things. Like, look at Alan Turing, for example. These are people who have done incredible things within our society as it stands now. Give people a chance, and I don't really like to do that, because that's the savant side of it as well. But some people do, and you're just as diverse as anyone else. If you're on the spectrum, not everyone's going to be a genius. Some people are going to really, really struggle and have real challenges just to just to like sometimes speak or anything else like that. So, you know, I don't like just highlighting the fact that there's some people who've made marvelous contributions, but we're all part of the same humanity. You know, we're all Homo sapiens. So treat each
Thank
other
you.
like that.
Mia, have you a comment at this point?
Yeah, I sort of, I mean, for me, it, like a lot of people have ostracized me in life just because, I think they just find a lot of needs I have to be like totally strange. Um, and I think a lot of people fear what they can't understand. And, but I mean, at the same time, I feel that I do have things I can offer, but there have been, I think, a lot of people, like certainly in the workplace, a lot of people just think, oh, we'll hire someone who can do all these things and who don't need any adjustments made. And I mean, I've often been denied access to services that others take for granted. So yeah, and I think equally what Samantha was saying about services and like support offered, there's a very sort of what I found is there's a very limited sort of support offered, and that's usually what I've been offered has been mainly behavioral, as opposed to like fixing the individual, as opposed to fixing the societal barriers. So yeah,
Wow, Mia, that's just spot on. I mean, it's sort of, and here's a really, I've just had a thought that, I mean, we go so crackers when people say that we should try and cure sort of homosexuality. If we talk about curing, everybody goes mad about that. And yet, sort of so much of the support offered to autistic people is aimed at curing their autism, and sort of absolutely wrong. Sort of embrace it.
I have I have in my lifetime had people suggesting curing transsexuality. So yeah, but
let's
yeah.
see what the other two people have to say. Stuart, have you any comments on this?
Yeah, I think Mia touched on this before, that there's an economic situation going on. It's not just a load of energy that we're wasting. I think there's also like an economic loss, because people aren't being supported. The sphere of people around them aren't being supported. And if we do want to support people and we do want to adapt society, that's actually creating jobs, you know. And as we move into an automated society, this is, you know, something we should be doing if we were economically literate as a government, you know. And Mia also touched on, you know, there's a huge imbalance of resources available to people, and that it's just, you know, a terrible inequality.
Thank you, Stuart. And Laura, have you any comments?
Yeah, I think I mean, there's been some really interesting comments so far. I think what I'd add to that is what I generally add to every conversation we tend to have, is that we need education. We really need education. At the minute, we seem to be living in a society that thinks there's something wrong with these people, rather than that they're just different and diverse, like we all are. We should go out of our way to help people who are different and celebrate people who are different, and we should go out of our way to try and understand. I mean, I don't have autism. I don't have autistic kids. I don't have a lot of autistic friends, but as I've gotten older, I've met more and more and more, and they're just wonderful people. And like everybody else, they're just a bit different and have additional needs in some ways. Some of them are actually much nicer people than neuro whatever normal is, you know. So yeah, I think education is really key. It's funny, we were talking about this morning on the schoolyard, me and some of the school mums, because there's a couple of autistic kids our daughter's school, and it was just like they kind of want to hush it away, and we don't talk about it. And but I remember in the olden days when I was young, it used to be like, oh, they're the naughty kids, they're the bad ones, but they're not. They didn't have the help, and we should, now that we understand it more, we should have the resources in place to be able to give these people the additional support they need to allow them to flourish, like Samantha said. So I do think and I'm happy to talk to my children, and I will be talking to my children about people who are neurodiverse, and to make it so it's not an issue, because we all need to, like Paul said, we are one human race. None of us are the same. That'd be boring. So yeah, I think education for starters is key, and get people to not start thinking of autistic people as other. They're just us, but with just a bit different. I think that's the main thing I'd add to that conversation.
I've got to be careful here, but there's also a sense in which autism is always represented as a negative. And sort of, in fact, that is wrong. There are an awful lot of things, traits, autistic traits, which are absolutely spectacularly important for us, our society. Obsessiveness is very common, and sort of without that obsessiveness, there's a whole load of things that would just never have been invented or discovered. And sort of, so it's a case that everybody, and sort of, yet we get high-performing autistic people who sort of change the world with their inventions, but so not everybody's a high-performing autistic person, but everybody has something to offer. And the fact that certain neurodiverse people within our society have something which is completely off the board different does not mean that actually might not be the most exciting thing you've heard today. And sort of, it's the same as with immigrants as well. Sort of, they are different, and it's that difference which is expanding and helps us to be a better and more productive society. And I'm sort of, for personal reasons, I'm hot on this. By the way, just before I bring in Mia, fabulous comments, everybody, on the comment section. Samantha will be dealing with that after the break. And sort of really, we could just spend the entire time, Samantha, you must be reading them as well. Sort of just fabulous comments. God bless you all for those. Thank you. We will take them into account later on. But now I'm going to bring in Mia. Sort of finishes off. Sort of the platform's yours, Mia. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I think is that autistic people do have a lot to offer, and there's so much wasted talent. And I think, as Laura was saying, I think about how we shouldn't, like the way we other people. It's like both me and a lot of other people I know have been dehumanized by a lot of people in society who think that, oh, like these people's needs are just too much to deal with or whatever. And I think actually, apart from anything else, if autistic people were sort of were included more, and their needs were met more, they would actually be able to give so much back to society, and many already do it the best, like as best they can in the world we live in.
God bless you, Mia. Thank you for that question. Thank you. It's really important for me because I spent my entire life up to my 50s being confused by other people, and then I became the Senko and I started assessing children for various needs. One of them was autism, and when I was assessing the children for autism, I suddenly realized that I'd score on this as well. I was describing myself, and suddenly so much of my life's problems fell into place. I understood myself. It was one of the most liberating things I've found out in my entire life, and everything you say, absolutely spot on. Next week is World Autism Week. Let's go and celebrate autism to the degree that it needs celebrating. Let's do what Mia says and sort of make sure that we have in our lives, in our homes, in our workplaces, necessary adjustments. We find no problem with necessary adjustments for physical disabilities, sort of necessary adjustments. Particularly in the school place, because it's sort of a really tough place, is school. And God bless you all for your comments. We're now going to move on. Thank you. We're going to say goodbye to Mia. Spot on, Mia. Delighted that you come. Thank you so much. We're going to play our music, and Mia's going to disappear, and we're going to come to the other questions.
Know the story like the back of my hand, 'cause I've heard it all before.
You can go, John.
Time to go. Right, so
yeah.
sort of just fell asleep there for a slight while. Anybody, don't take it today. Laura, Boris, I don't believe this. I think it's a lie. Boris Johnson admits regrets over handling a first COVID wave. Off you go.
Yes. It is a lie. That's not exactly what he did.
Blue touch paper and stand back.
I'm a bit calmer now, John. But yeah, no, so I did read the article. It's very much just, it's a bit of a pathetic attempt at him saying, oh, yes, that's a good headline. But actually, if you read it, he didn't really say that. He just said, yeah, we could have probably done better, and we should have probably done better, but we didn't know this and we didn't know that. And then all the excuses come again. And it's just pathetic because, you know, it's not an apology. It's not really an admission of guilt. He has performed appallingly, and I still will maintain to this day that anybody who thinks, oh, well, he's just doing his best. No, he's not. He's been, you know, and if you were in any other job, you'd have been sacked by now for negligence. That's effectively what he's done. He's been negligent. I'll go through a couple of things here because I've always loved this list. And I find it really interesting that on January the 21st last year, that was when China confirms there's a human-to-human transmission of a really bad virus. Then Wuhan is locked down a couple of days later. Then the first Cobra meeting start, which he misses. And then the second Cobra meeting, which he misses. Then the government failed to check quarantine for airport arrivals. Just left that. That's the end of January. The World Health Organization declared a public health emergency and said it was of international concern. So Boris raised the threat level here from low to moderate. Then 2 people in the UK tested positive. And the thing is, at every stage in that article today, he said, you know, we did what we could with the information we've had. But if you go back and have a look at actually what the scientists were saying, he completely ignored them. He didn't do what he should have done. He didn't take into account all the evidence. He did what he bloody well wanted. And that episode of This Morning will haunt me forever, where he said, well, maybe we'll just take it on the chin and see how it goes through the population. That was his stance from day one, and it's never changed. He might have said different things, phrased it in different ways, but it's never changed. He wanted to go through the whole population. If it kills off a load of old people, it doesn't matter because it saves them money. You know, I honestly do think that this is just, I don't even think it's been a plan. I do think it's ineptitude on many levels, but also they haven't half gained from it, you know, given their rich friends all the track and trace things and the PPE contracts, people, as I've said on this show many times, who had no business making PPE. Like, they were terrible and they couldn't deliver, and then it was sold off to other countries. So they've done terribly, and at every stage he has had the information he needed to do better, So it's no excuse now to say, oh, well, you know, if I'd known, he did know. We don't need Captain Hindsight on this one. He had foresight and he didn't use it. So, yes, I'm still angry at him, and I will be angry at him forever. And the fact that now, oh, I can feel myself gearing up here, John. The fact that now he's talking about a memorial for all these people who've died. What a lovely thought. Isn't that sweet? They didn't need to die. They didn't need to die if he'd have done the job properly from day one. And I'm going to leave it there because I'll get angry and I might swear. We're not doing that tonight.
Sam, any comments about this, about the apology, which wasn't an apology?
Yeah, I mean, just to go to the comments we've been getting, you know, Leanne pointed out that he's got a really strong track record for being sacked from his jobs and a really strong track record for lying and being caught out for it. Chris mentions we should call him Prime Minister, not Boris. So all we're doing is helping him create this fairy tale story of this bumbling buffoon trying my best. Oh, I'm just a bit charismatic. You love me really, when he's actually, I mean, you know, as David says, you know, he's gaslighting the country. He's showing abusive behaviour. He's telling us things we know aren't true. He's coming along to say sorry, but he's going to do the same thing again. We all know he is. If you talk to members of the public about the horrendous things that he's done, like not attending the Cobra meetings and remember the time where you couldn't get a test when poor Paul and Laura were ill? You know, they don't even know for certain that they had COVID because at that time you wouldn't get a test unless you actually hospitalized. Why? Why did they let that happen to us? And actually, even worse than the let's take it on a chin thing, he went to a conference where he made the point that I don't think the UK is going to lock down. All these other countries are locking down. I don't think the UK is going to lock down, and that's going to give us an economic advantage over other countries. And what has happened is, because we didn't lock down early enough, we're going to end up having the long-term effects of COVID on our economy for a lot longer than other countries. You know, if you're in Wuhan right now, you can go out for a drink, you can go to a nightclub, because they really clamped down. And unfortunately, I've said it before, it's like knits. You've got to start it out properly, otherwise it'll just keep coming back. And unfortunately, when COVID keeps coming back, it gives it more chance to become a variant. Every scratching now. To create these variants, which and you know, and a variant of COVID is a threat to the entire world.
Thank you, Sam. Stuart, my Tesco man came to visit me today, and I mentioned how much I hated the Tories, and sort of he says, yes, but it's been very difficult for him, hasn't it? Sort of, and whether we like it or not, millions of people across the country. I don't think anybody could have coped with it. I'm glad I wasn't the Prime Minister, he said to me. And millions of people just forgiving for 150,000 deaths. It was just very difficult, and sort of they've done as well as anybody could do. My question to you is, how do people think like this? And how are we ever going to change that mindset that they did well in the circumstances?
I think there's a detach, isn't there, from like real world jobs and what politicians do. People imagine that they're doing these things single-handedly. They've got this idea that, you know, Winston Churchill won World War II all by his lonesome Todd. It wasn't the thousands of people around him helping him make decisions. It wasn't the soldiers going and, you know, losing their lives. They think it's just all Boris. There's an absolute disconnect from what his actual job is.
Explore that a bit more, Stuart.
People think he sits there and he's making all these tough decisions, but he isn't. You know, he makes some decisions, and then the people underneath him will be making some decisions. And while at the end of the day he is 100% accountable, It's not like he's awake 24 hours a day, making every, he's not made a decision about what's going on in Newton Aycliffe. He's making big blanket decisions, and then everybody else around him's having to put those into effect. He's not really being worked the way people think he is. It's not quite the same, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It would be awful to be the sitting prime minister through this kind of tragedy, but it's not really what people imagine. I think it would be nice if we had some proper insight to what his day-to-day life was. Wake up in the morning till the time he clocked off.
But if what you're saying is true, what you're doing is you're saying that he is free from some of the blame from this.
No, I think that when you stick your name down on a ballot to be prime minister, you're saying that the buck stops with me, and I'm taking responsibility for all these people around me making decisions. The same if you were the leader of a council, and certain decisions that were perhaps taken, by officers or other councillors, and you felt you had some responsibility, so you would step down the same way that generally if you were a minister in a department and some scandal came to light within your department, you would often step down as the leadership. When you sign up to be on the ballot, you're signing up to the book stops with you. That's where it is.
Thank you for clarifying, Stuart. That's a really interesting point. Thank you. And Paul, very briefly, please, a last word on Boris Johnson.
Well, he's full of shit, isn't he? I think that's what it comes down to. He doesn't care about the truth. Everything's about ambition. The only quality he really has is ambition. And it's not ambition to change anyone's life for the better. It's an ambition to become Prime Minister. That's all he's ever cared about. He loves the idea of becoming Prime Minister. He's done that. He's made a success of that. And then he became Prime Minister and he's like, well, I'm going to have to do some work here. Well, I'll just do this. You know what? I'll go and I'll shake everyone's hand. I'll shake everyone's hand with COVID. I'll pretend the facts aren't real. Because do you know what? The truth to Boris Johnson doesn't matter. He knows what the truth is. He always knows what the truth is. But Boris Johnson deep down believes that the truth isn't a thing that concerns him. He's more bothered about perceptions and what people think of him and so on. And I'll give you an example. There's a brilliant speech that he did before. And I say brilliant, it's brilliantly stupid. What he did is he sat back one time and he's saying, right, okay, I'm going to tell you about how terrible this situation is in Britain. And he reeled off all these statistics and he said, he was saying, there are blah, blah, blah. He wobbled his head and ruffled his hair. And he said, well, there are so many people below 85 IQ. There's a certain percentage of people, I believe it was I don't know, maybe about 30-odd%. And he described this awful situation where Britain's really, really stupid. And what he did is, if anyone knows anything about IQ tests, that's all set out anyway. There's always a certain percentage of people in any country, in any nation in the world, in any population, in any normal population. It's a normal population. So if you know anything about maths, there will be a certain amount below a certain IQ and there'll be a certain amount above a certain IQ. And none of it matters. None of it matters at all. But he made it into a speech. And basically, he presented facts as this idea that Britain's gone to the dogs. And it was just the facts of how something worked. It was as if he was saying, oh, well, if you turn the tap one way, the water will come on. Isn't it a disgrace? It was absolutely factual what he said. And yet he twisted it around to his motive. And you could tell he knew exactly what he's doing. The fella has absolutely no care in the world about the truth. All he cares about is what he can get away with. And he's laughing at us. He is laughing at us.
Thank you, Musa Askari. He's grossly underestimated. His caricature works as a shield. Spot on, in my opinion. Thank you. I'm going to move on now. Thank you. Stuart, COVID checks at pubs could nudge young people to get the vaccine. This is the idea that we're going to have to show, is it a passport before we can go to a pub to show that we've had the what do you reckon to that, Stuart?
Yeah, the government's musing a couple of ideas, a passport, evidence of a test, or evidence of having the vaccine to get into pubs or gigs. Not really to make those places safer, but as a way to push younger people into getting the jab in the first place. Because there's some belief that younger people are less inclined to get the vaccine, be it through the idea that it's a bit of a hoax, this COVID thing, or that there's more, they have more belief in their own, human body and their own health system to cope with the effects of it. And there's a few issues that have come to light. Obviously, human rights are being infringed, possibly. There's workplace issues. If you're asking people to go into bars to show evidence of a vaccine, but you're not asking that of their employees, there's some issues around there. But I think it says more about the issues we have about getting people to take up the vaccine than it does about trying to make pubs a safe place.
Having said all that, and thanks for your deep insight, if they were to introduce a passport to go to a pub, would you agree or disagree?
I think I'd disagree.
Thank you. Laura, would you be happy to show your passport to get in to have a drink?
I don't know. It feels. If it was a passport to prove that I was above 21, then I'd be thrilled to be asked for it, to be honest. But no, I don't know. I thought this was really like an intense discussion, and then you lost me when Stuart said, "Well, the Sun think," and I thought, "Oh, well, this is a load of rubbish, then, isn't it?" The Sun is saying something. Don't listen to it. It's rubbish. The Sun are awful. They're in the pockets of these horrendous people. But I think the issue for me is, I don't like anybody being told they have to do something. I think it's wrong. I mean, yeah, follow laws, don't murder people and stuff, but like being told they have to do something as big as getting a vaccine. Now, I'm of the mind that everybody should get the vaccine, but I'm not about to bring in legislation that means everybody is told they have to or else. I think what they need to do is do a better job on convincing people that it's a good idea to get one. I feel like they've like Paul said earlier, they've got no care about what's going on in the UK at all, and I don't think they really care if people get it or not. It's just, all this is just words to make them look good in the press, like they think something's important, but they couldn't care less. I mean, they've been getting their private pubs and meals and restaurants and everything this whole time. None of this bothers them. So I think what they need to do is, well, for start, let's get the Tories out at every opportunity, but start educating people on why it's important to get this vaccine. It's not just about you, it's about the people around you and how you can protect people, promoting empathy. Again, back to this idea of education. Just start talking about it and telling people why it's important. Don't tell them they have to get it or else. You never win an argument by telling somebody they're wrong. One of Paul's famous lines that I will pinch till I am very grey.
I was going to move on because we are running out of time, so please forgive me, everybody. I'm going to ask Laura a supplementary question. Seatbelts, they are the thing, surely, that just proves that you were wrong on what you just said. That everybody who said we've got to educate people to wear seatbelts, we've got to wear seatbelts. It's stupid not to wear seatbelts. You go through the windscreen with the force of an elephant. There were adverts, all kinds of things, and sort of. And it just, people wouldn't, and then they said £50 fine. Everybody wears a seatbelt, and sort of.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't know where those statistics are from, John, because that elephant advert ruined me for life, and I will always strap myself in because of that.
Stuart.
Yeah, I think the seatbelt analogy is a good one, because just like the vaccine, which not everybody can get, not everybody has equal access to. There's lots of reasons that you wouldn't get it. lots of cars are legal to be on the road without seatbelts. Lots of cars of a certain age, of a certain type, don't require seatbelts. And it's not illegal to be on the roads with those cars.
Samantha, bring this conclude and I'm interested. Sort of, this has been a bit of a kind of a wandering around discussion. We haven't gone down a certain line. It's good. People got different ideas. I'm interested to see what people are saying about this on the thing. But Samantha, bring this bit of the discussion to a close.
So it's interesting to talk about seatbelts and the idea that society can change. And there's reasons behind it. I was trying to find a citation, but I'm sure I read that passports, as in the passport you would use to go on holiday, came in as a result of the Spanish flu. So like they didn't have passports before that, and they brought them in so they could track people's movements around the world to prevent further outbreaks. I'd love if somebody knows that's true and can provide a citation.
That would be just
and so we could have the same argument then. They could say, oh, I can't believe I can't just go to another country and I've got to show them this piece of paper to prove that I've not come from somewhere that's riddled with the Spanish flu. I do think enforcement, when it comes down to it, actually I think this type of enforcement is probably counterproductive, because what we're fighting against is a very like the QAnon, the type of people who believe that there is a cabal of cannibal paedophiles running the country. If you can convince people to believe that, then you convince people that there's a microchip in the vaccine, or that it's going to make it infertile. Those type of people who believe those types of things will go to extreme lengths to make sure that they don't get a vaccine. So I think we need to make sure we don't drive these discussions underground by having too much enforcement. I think enforcing vaccines is counterproductive and leads to less people being vaccinated. So we need to look at it from a whole perspective.
Thank you so much, Sam. I could have listened to you a lot longer on that, but it's 5 minutes to go. Barbara Claire, my wife, she would agree with you, because she thinks that this is a conscious taking away of our rights, and where that opinion slides into QAnon, it's a seamless thing. And but she just believes it's all part of permanently depriving us of certain freedoms, and that's a discussion on itself if somebody wants to suggest it. Paul, I'm going to come on to the last question of all. I'm not going to ask anybody to speak on it, but you only have 4 minutes, and I'm going to stop here. David Cameron texted Rishi Sunak to get COVID loans for Greensill, says report. What's happening? What do you think about it? And then the show would end.
Who would have thought that the person who attacked other people? So, can anyone remember when Jimmy Carr was so derided in the media for using a tax avoidance scheme, and David Cameron's father at the same time was still saying was still doing the same thing allegedly. He was using a tax avoidance scheme as well. But David Cameron went on TV and went, "Oh, it's absolutely disgusting, this horrible thing. Jimmy Carr is an absolute nightmare," blaming the outcome rather than the problem. So the outcome of that was Jimmy Carr completely legally did something that, that we all think is morally reprehensible, which is entirely avoid tax, hide your money somewhere, which we all know the wealthy people generally tend to do quite a lot. And yet David Cameron stood up there and was willing to do that and do nothing about it. He was the Prime Minister of the country, and he was willing to do absolutely nothing about it, about closing those tax loopholes that were the actual problem. So he's willing to do that. Now, what we've seen is David Cameron has been phoning up Rishi Sunak, or sending him WhatsApp messages or something like that, trying to get lots of money so that the company that he represents can loan other people money. So he wanted some free money, some no obligation loans, so that his company that he represents could then make money out of loaning that money to other people. So the government were liable for these loans. If it all went wrong, this company's in trouble anyway. It's in financial trouble anyway. And David Cameron is a lobbyist. And it's this revolving door between like finance and politics. You know, we've seen a lot of people. We've seen Sajid Javid go back into the city. Rishi Sunak was responsible for partially responsible for the world financial crash in 2008. These people are in it up to their necks. We are not playing by the same rules, and I think like most of the armchair pundits are sitting there going, "Oh ha ha, I think this about immigrants. Ha ha ha, I think this about that. Yes, I'll agree with them on this one. Ho ho ho, I'm so political." And they don't know that they are not even on the board. Like, you know, if this is Monopoly, someone is over there playing like Cluedo or something like that, and that's the actual game. This whole thing is an entire mess, and it's a rigged game in which someone like David Cameron knows exactly how to pull the strings, exactly what he can get out of it. So this revolving door between lobbyists who are telling parliamentarians what they should vote for and politicians themselves, it's an absolute recipe for disaster. We need rid of it.
That was just. Did you see me go off on one when I just had a thought? Then that was just brilliant. That, Paul, sort of, we're all here falling out about what we think is politics, and the real game is doing something different, making money, I presume, over there, and sort of just dropping dead cats onto the table to try and get us talking about all these other things. Absolutely fantastic team. You are so brilliant. And my golly, what a lively chat stream tonight. Best of luck, Samantha, with that. What we're going to do now, people, is we're going to say bye-bye to you. Most people just stay. If you're one of those people from Seaham, don't go, because the second half is where we make all those indiscreet comments that you can clip and put out there and give other people. Why not these other people? Why must it always be me who's so famous? Choose one of these other people saying something indiscreet, and then you can get angry about that as well. And we're going to listen to No Pass Around. We're going to come back, and Sam's going to take us through all the comments. God bless. Bye-bye. If you've got to go, see you next week. Otherwise, hang on.
Can I just say as well, before we do that one, we do have a really good show coming up on Thursday for Autism Awareness Week. We've got Laura. You will know the names of the people who are coming on, but we've got some really, really good guests to talk about that. We really want to highlight this. Apparently I made a faux pas earlier on. Didn't mean to. Really sorry, because you know it's really difficult to speak about these things. But yeah, that's coming up on Thursday, and we hope people will be willing to tune in for that one. And also massive thank you to Mia, who was really, really good, and I think everyone really thoroughly enjoyed that part of the discussion. There were so many high quality comments. So sorry to go on about that, but it's just really important that we highlight these issues, I think. And yeah, that's it. Laura, who's coming on? Do you know?
I do know. So we've got 3 guests. We've got Heidi Smith, who you'll all know. She's been on the show before. She's a candidate for Sedgefield. She's also just won an award for her work with the Sensory Place, who are doing amazing things for families and autistic children in the area. We've also got Sib Ali, who's actually made a film about dealing with autism, about life with autism and his perspective of that. Really, really interesting. We'll be able to show you a teaser trailer of that as well. And also we've got Austin Harney, who has autism himself. He's also a really dedicated trade unionist, and he's done loads of things, and he's coming to tell us about his experiences as well. It's going to be a lovely show. I will host it, but I will keep my mouth shut as much as possible. I think it's more important that we hear from these people and their experiences and what people with autism actually want. So that's the line we're going with this one. So it's really good. 8 p.m. on Thursday. And
Sib's been very active in the chat as well tonight, so thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Sib. And so now, I think with the permission of the team, we're going to go and take a break. See you in 5 minutes. God bless.
My name is Jack Atkins and I'm not afraid. And I live and die by this vow that I've made. The only good fascist, a dead one, they say. And around here we are. When I first left all them months ago, I told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. Well, for an ambulance driver my shot's pretty sure. And around here we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. I told my mother, now mother be strong, for the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone, for I'm here we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, but you armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past us first. And around here we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here, no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today.
Is it John?
Well, it's not me, is it? I've been told to
Oh,
go.
sorry,
but it's
Samantha.
not my show. It's sort of Sam.
Samantha, yes, hello. Oh, my video has stopped. Anyway, yes, this is the part where we talk about the comments that you made. I want to start by just going over some things about autistic people. There was a thing flagged about people with autism versus autistic people. Most of the autistic people I know prefer autistic people rather than people with autism, but like every group, autistic people are not a homogenous group. So I just think you've got to listen to whatever anybody tells you about how they want to be addressed and do it appropriately. There were also comments about kind of alluding to high functioning and low functioning autism, which is problematic. It's tricky because there will still be healthcare professionals out there who will talk about high functioning autism, and people who will try and make you feel better about your family by saying, oh well, but they're a high functioning autistic, aren't they? And you're like, because those words don't really mean anything, and they can cause a lot more trouble than they solve. And the other thing is, we've got to be careful that we don't sort of fetishize autistic people and talk too much about them having great skills and they're all going to be Alan Turing. It's not going to happen, but it is fair to talk about the advantages of autism. Obviously I had the experience of having 2 autistic children followed by a neurotypical child, and I enjoyed sort of the thought experiment of talking about the disadvantages of neurotypicality. Because this child, she wants to eat different things all the time. She always wants to talk to me. She's got a terrible attention span. There are advantages and disadvantages to all different types of brains equally. So I liked the comment on about it's like having different operating systems. So you can have a Mac running Mac OS and a Windows computer running Windows, and they can be incompatible with each other, but they're both equally good. And I'm not saying that neurotypical people and autistic people are not compatible, but that I think that's probably a fair analogy. It's just different ways of processing the world. Chris made a really good point. She said, having worked with a lot of autistic children of different ages, we need to prepare other children, and that means preparing their parents first. I think we've probably all seen that meme of a parent and her tongue going into the child's mouth and the child being a bully. A lot of stuff does come through parents, but then that's sort of a real generational issue. A lot of parents would say things, a lot of our parents would probably say things that we would never say and we would consider to be not socially acceptable. So Graham Marsh said differences should be celebrated. Absolutely. Go on, Paul.
I was just going to say there's some fun things coming on now. There's someone who's accusing us of being bored, and I was like, well, if you're bored enough to write that on someone else's YouTube stream, you're doing all right, aren't you? You must be kind of bored yourself. So quite funny, but there's some interesting questions coming in. I'm sure you'll get to very shortly.
I noticed that as well, Paul, and sort of. I immediately looked to see if we looked bored, and I was just listening. That's all.
So he's agreed. He is a bit bored, bless him. But I'm assuming it's a him. I'm not sure, but we're here for you. We're here for you. We can be your company for tonight, and you're really welcome here. We're not the kind of people who chase people away. So come with us on our journey.
Yeah, if you've got YouTube comments, feel free to jump in with them, because I've just been watching the Facebook stream tonight.
Right, yeah, we've got a few things coming in, but there's Thank you. He's saying God bless us, so we're all having a lovely time now. We're all happy.
Well, that's nice. Yeah, and maybe we're just not used to seeing people listen to each other anymore, you know. Maybe we expect everything to be so entertaining. And, you know, next time I'll make John do a little dance when I'm talking. Right at the top
I'm just interrupting you there, Sam. I want to point out that Rebecca Dixon McWaters pointed out that she missed me singing. Sort of, you haven't reported that comment, haha. Sort of that sort of somebody enjoyed my singing. I'm sure she was being sarcastic, but the fact is somebody said it, haha.
And you didn't even sing like a Bee Gee either.
Sorry, what you were talking about such serious things, and we're just being silly now.
No, that's fine. I need to get you talking anyway.
I think while you look for a comment there, it's just so lovely to see so many positive comments about people thinking that the answer to the initial question in the show is yes, we should be trying to adapt, rather than having people adapt to the system, you know, that suits the most people. I think that was lovely. It was really, really nice, and I think we don't just have left-wing people on here. We've got all sorts of different people who come on here, and that was the general feel, and I think that was a nice thing.
So there's a comment from Chris Hood again, which I'm going to go to, and I'm going to answer it, even though he's addressed it to John, and John can answer it as well. You know, I'm not going to shut down a male voice. But the question is, John says that as a county councillor, you've got a duty to look after the whole county. But what about villages where there's been virtually no investment compared to other towns and villages? How should the people who live in those villages feel? Now, I am going to speak because I know that Chris has got a specific background where he comes from, where he's talking about the devastation caused by listing villages as Category D. For people who don't know, Category D villages were basically villages where funding was intentionally sort of stripped from them, and the idea was that that village was sort of unviable and you should invest the money in places around. Now that was a failure, because that's not how people live. People don't just move away from a town because you've removed the funding from it. People have got long-standing cultural and family ties to places. So what you end up is then with villages with no resources, with people who are embedded in them, and then feel very angry that they don't have any resources. The ward that I'm standing for is Shildon and Dean Valley, and the Dean Valley villages are very much in that situation where funding was taken away from them. I would say that I think it's right for people like me to acknowledge that was a bad decision at the time, and that we need to work towards healing the problems that were caused by that. But I don't think the solution is electing independent councillors, because you need clout behind you to put the things in place that are needed to support those villages that are suffering from limited funding. And I'm sure Chris, I believe he's standing as an independent, so I'm sure he'd be a great local councillor, and I totally believe he's got the right sort of, his heart in the right place. But I just think the answer isn't necessarily electing independents because a Labour group 30, 40 years ago made a bad decision. You know, none of those, well, some of those people probably still are on the council, but hopefully if we're doing what I do, the right thing, and bringing new people in, it's really tricky to really blame somebody like me for something that happened 40 years ago, you know. So I just think, for all of the arguments, I've said this before, you know, you can't say that it's both wrong to elect somebody just because they're standing for the Labour Party, and also wrong to elect to not vote for somebody just because they're standing for the Labour Party. I think you need to look at the whole package, and look for somebody who's going to be a local champion and fight for your corner. I mean, it's a balance, isn't it, John? I know what you said about being a councillor for the whole county, and that's right, but you still fight for your local community as well, don't you?
Are you bringing me in here? I'm just looking at what Leviticus 20 verse 30 says. Verse 20, Leviticus 20 verse 13. We can go back. It'll be anti-LGBT, I think. First of all, Chris has just come on, and I would absolutely agree with what he says. That basically, I come from Newton Aycliffe, and it was built in 1945 as an alternative to the pit villages. And you have to understand the thinking there, that what was the situation there was that there was such dreadful deprivation, and this quality of housing was so appalling in those villages, in the back to back and the outside sanitation and all these things. And the thinking of the time was that we're going to create this new town, which is Newton Aycliffe, which is going to have these lovely houses. And my golly, in comparison, they were. And sort of what we'll do is we'll just shut down those, we'll close down those villages. And it was absolutely to try and force people, and I suppose it's relevant to the discussion we were having about passports to go into the pub. So you didn't allow any development in those villages, and it was to force people to come and live in places like Newton Aycliffe and move out of the pit villages. And Samantha's absolutely right, that people just refused. They said, I love Coundon. I am not going to move out of Coundon. And that hung on right into the 70s. They were forbidden to have any new development in these places. And Samantha's absolutely right. It was an absolute nightmare, but it had its heart in the right place. But it was an awful decision, and it led to some dreadful things. But what Chris is referring to, Sam, is he's saying that there isn't an actual category D, but what the current Labour administration in Durham is doing, it's running a kind of an ethical category D, because it's sort of not putting enough money into regenerating places like Walsingham and St John's Chapel, and it's pouring its money into places like Durham and Bishop Auckland. And this is an ethical sort of kind of quasi-category D being enacted by the Labour administration intentionally upon the hinterlands. And it's not true. And I would just say two things. First of all, when I made my comments, I was trying to get people to see that, in fact, a Labour County Council does much more than you actually think. The Labour County Council is a £1.3 billion organisation. 2/3 of that money is spent on social services, children's social services and adult social services. And those are distributed across the county according to need. So, in fact, where there is a need, it is addressed. So all but absolute little drips of money go to providing these kind of services. There's an awful lot of money goes into providing bus services into places which don't get commercial bus routes, and therefore sort of the franchise system works. That sort of they do the big routes and the ones that make money, and we have to pay them to send buses out to St John's Chapel and Walsingham. And so there's so much money goes into providing social infrastructure that you just don't see, and that is absolutely distributed fairly. And sort of then on top of that, an awful lot of the money that's spent is spent, so it is actually not council money. that it's inward investment money, or it's based on inward investment money, or it's ramped up by inward investment money. So, for instance, an awful lot of money being spent on Bishop Auckland at the moment, that all comes from that chap, Jonathan Ruffer, and what he's doing around Kinran and things like that. And he's bringing in money from outside. And sort of occasionally he gets us to do him a car park. But in fact, we're not pouring money into Bishop Auckland. Money is pouring into Bishop Auckland, but it's not ours. And sort of what I would ask Chris to do would just go and look at the £25 million which we've managed to find for regeneration, and look at the principles about how that's being distributed. There are some things going into real areas of poverty like Horden, and there's other things where we're just going to give each AAP £500,000, and you can decide on how you spend it. Now, there's lots of people, and what you've got to understand about, and I'll shut up shortly. That's Sam. Thanks. You just set the thing going, and I just started going like the clock would tie. But that sort of every community in County Durham believes that it's getting note, and they're jealous of hell of the community next to them because they're getting it all. And sort of this is an absolute thing that they all believe. And in fact, the county council does its best to meet needs in all the communities. And it's very careful about sort of where it puts its LC whips and where it puts its fix. And
but surely both things can be true. Like the county council can be trying the best, and these villages are not getting a fair deal. Like, there isn't enough investment. There just isn't enough investment. We've got an extremely unfair council tax system. We've got, let's say in my village where we live now, we've not put up the parish council precept for years and years and years because we know that people can't afford it. And yet, that means we can't invest anymore. The system is so fundamentally unfair. So we can answer this question very easily by, we don't have to defend ourselves and say, well, actually, you're saying we have to choose between X and Y, and they've got that awful situation to deal with. Well, yeah, that decision can be justified, but can it be justified that we're having to make that decision? And I think that's what Chris is probably talking about there. This is
what Chris is saying
a
is
really
that
unfair system.
I haven't had a pot of money being plopped into my community. That's what he's saying.
He probably deserves one. They probably need one.
Yes.
They could probably use it really wisely.
They haven't.
Yeah.
But that's not because we got anything against his community, wherever it might be. Just because there's not money, there's not the money to do it. And so what you do is you look at the regeneration scheme. It sets principles and it allocates money according to principles. Yeah. We've poured £70 million into leisure. Every leisure centre in the county is going to have some kind of improvement. We've rebuilt 3 of them. But of course, you don't get it if you haven't got a leisure centre in your community. And sort of, so, people without a leisure centre, we need to understand that leisure is not about just being in leisure in communities, and money is being put into other things. You just got to look where it is. But sort of, I take his point. There's just not enough money to fix all the things that are wrong.
I think we all get tired of this. There should be investment in people. Look at us. We're buying a bunch of nukes, aren't we? We're buying extra nuclear weapons that we will, hopefully we'll never do a genocide. Hopefully we'll never use them. So why not, if that money's there and able to be used, then let's just use it on our communities and do something that's going to help our communities. Use local businesses, put some money in and put some stipulations in, say this has got to stay local. And then you do improve communities. There are so many ways we can do it. And, I think I can understand the county council position is saying we're not doing anything to try and harm a certain section of our county community, and we're trying to do things in as fair a way as possible. But it isn't fair. Whatever it isn't fair. Whatever you can do as a county council, it isn't fair unless we can change the picture nationally or do something really intelligent to subvert the whole national situation. That's my position anyway. So
absolutely right, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. The fact of the matter that there are just there is no resources available, and the council can try its best, and I believe that it does.
Did
But
we see? Oh, sorry, Samantha. Will you come back to me afterwards because I spotted a nice question?
Yeah, that's fine. I think Chris is mentioning the County Durham plan, perhaps there. We've got similar arguments about that in Shildon. The County Durham plan, the only time it mentions Shildon is talking about the locomotion being a driver of our economy, and currently Locomotion Museum isn't really a driver of our economy because people don't go from the museum to the town centre. But I think the County Durham plan is a whole another issue. It's not about what can happen, it's about setting out legal framework for what might happen. So just because it's not in the County Durham plan doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I'm a huge believer in social entrepreneurship. I was a social entrepreneur myself. The great thing about social entrepreneurship, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know, it's real business, but it's not for profit. So all of your money gets reinvested in the services that you're providing, and there are more accessible ways of getting funding. So you can run a proper business. So one of the ones I saw this week was at a food waste shop. It's a proper shop that, real trade happens at, but they are a CIC, so there's no fat cats at the top skimming things off.
Very briefly, Sam, before you move on, I'm so sorry to interrupt you there. Please forgive me. Chris Hood raises the point that the only reference to the Haswells in the 25 million programme is the promise to improve shop fronts, and there's no shop fronts in Haswell Plough. First of all, can I apologise for that error? It's just absolutely unforgivable. The way the £25 million programme was, that document was produced, is we talked to the local AAPs about what kind of thing they would want to see, and the kind of things that they suggested, we went in as putting examples of the kind of things that might happen. If that was wrongly informed, I'm just apologise. There's just no question about that. That was outrageous. But what is happening, each AAP is getting £500,000 to spend on its own area. And so you can decide, engage with your AAP, and you can decide what it's spent on. And sort of, if there are no shop fronts in Haswell Plough, what needs doing in Haswell Plough? That's the key there. And you tell the AAP, and you've got £500,000 to try and put that right. I apologise.
No, that's fine. I was rambling a bit anyway. Paul, go to your question, comment.
So there was this really, really fun thing. There was like there was someone, I don't know who it was, they were talking about the Lib Dem surge and come on the Lib Dems are going to do some stuff. I'm really interested to hear from Laura and Stuart about whether we really like the Lib Dems and whether the Lib Dems are like, they've got like a political ideology that we can all agree with, like, they stick to their promises such as cancelling tuition fees by tripling them, and also everyone agrees with Nick Clegg until Nick Clegg sold out and became someone who works for Facebook. So I do like talking about the Lib Dems. And Laura, I know that you are a massive Joe Swinson fan. Can you talk to us a little bit about Joe Swinson?
I think my only comment goes like, no. Talk about it. I think they're awful. The Lib Dems are just power hungry idiots. They just look for what the public want, promise it, and then don't deliver it. I don't like the Lib Dems. I don't know. I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to do this publicly. I've voted for the Lib Dems once before, and then let me down massively, and I'll never trust them again. You can't. All the things they said they stood for, you don't go into coalition with the Tories. You just don't. Like, no, that's completely opposite to what they said they were. And now they've just become Tory light. No. That's all I've got to say about the Lib Dems, I'm afraid.
The thing is, like, Charles Kennedy was a really principled man. A very principled man. You know, he stood up against the Iraq War. There were some people who, like, a lot of people thought the Lib Dems were to the left of the Labour Party.
Yeah, but they've obviously got a lot of opportunism in there, opportunists even. You know, he might have been a decent one, but those times have gone. Now we've just got people who are seeking a seat, seeking power, seeking whatever it is they want. They're clearly not people who really want to make change and really want to make a difference. And if they are, they're going about it the wrong way, because they've just, like, no one trusts them anymore. They've come across like liars after the last, you know, foray into power, and they lost all of their trust, and they lost all of their realism, and just pathetic. So no, I'm not a Lib Dem supporter anymore. I never really was. I just didn't know what to do.
No, I was only joking. That whole thing was sarcastic. So,
I know it was, because you know how much I can't stand Jo Swinson.
She's the next Prime Minister, don't you know?
Again, she did mint the last
sure.
time.
She wakes up every morning, says it in the mirror.
That'll make it happen.
What about the local situation, Stuart?
Oh, I don't know, because I've only voted Lib Dem on a national thing, and the same as Laura, you know, I voted because of university tuition, and I'm not a fan of neoliberalism. And what we got was, I didn't go to university, and we got mass austerity. So I kind of paint a picture of the makeup of the party. I mean, I'm sure there's good people in every party. There must be. You can only hope that there is. But I think when you're trying to change the world and make it a better place, you need to know who is going to be swayed one way or the other, and you need people who are going to be, you know, swayed to the agenda of people in need, who are going to make that stand. You know, rather than this, you kind of get like a bit of a feeling of the Lib Dems try to go down the middle and weave their way through like a river, and you're not sure which way the meander's going to go each time, and that's unsettling to me. I don't like that.
What I don't get, right, is I know that during this election, when I talk to voters, Brexit will come up and people will be like, oh, I bet you were a Remainer, right? Actually, when Brexit happened, I wasn't even politically engaged enough to really be a Leaver or a Remainer. I was a do not carer, right? But the Lib Dems, who their party slogan was bollocks to Brexit, will just not get asked that question and just like sail right through it, and Brexit voting people will vote for Lib Dem local candidates. And I'm like, what? This is not fair. Come on. Have you noticed that, John?
They were second referendum all the way, weren't they? Oh, what's...
Yeah. Oh, we've lost Stuart. That's going to mess up our frames.
Twill indeed. Everything's gone haywire. Everything's gone haywire. Hang on, I can fix it, I reckon.
I can see it. I can see our frames now. They're all wonky. We can only see one of Paul's eyes. And in fact, Paul and John's face are almost like two halves that you could fit together.
Well, I think if anything, that is a moment to go. I'm sure I've got a backup plan.
But it is late, and some of us have
this
really...
works.
No, it doesn't.
It does.
All right, if you manage to make it work, I'm gonna wait for it to come through on my screen. Oh, there we go. That does work. Yay. Oh, now somebody's going to screenshot John with his socialist above his head, and that's also something they're going to drag him for.
Jewish internet died.
He's back.
He's back. I can switch. Look at this. No one...
I wish I got that amount of, joyous applause every time I enter a room.
It's not
We
fixed.
just spent the entire time readjusting the screen to have 4 boxes on it.
Oh, I think it is fixed now.
Yeah.
Now it's time to finish. Boom.
Now it's time to finish, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
I do want to say I do appreciate, I appreciate what Chris is saying, and I totally agree. Like, I'm angry about the perceived lack of funding towards children in Dean Valley, and that's one of the reasons that I'm standing. But I totally respect anybody who wants to stand because they want to give a bigger shout to their town or village. That's totally, admirable, laudable. You're allowed to be annoyed. We've lived under austerity for 11 years, and it has gutted our infrastructure, and it's easy to blame the council. But the more you look into it, I think you will, if you are lucky enough to be elected, by the end of your term, you will see that people are working very hard on the ground to try and help everyone. Yes, John?
Just, I'm sorry, but and I've said too much as it is. Absolutely correct, Sam. And when I started off as well, I was fighting for Newton Aycliffe. And you get in there and you fight for your own area. That's I get some feedback here. I'm so sorry. But the point is when you get up there with 125 other councillors, and they're all fighting for their area as well. It's not just a case of that area needs money. What you find is that sort of one of the things I've had to cope with is just some areas so much more deprived than my area of Aycliffe North, and I just can't possibly fight for my area when there's those things that need addressing in that area, and of course that's not going to make me very popular in my area, but we have to be responsible and we have to look at the whole picture. If you get to County Hall, my golly, please raise those issues for your own community. That is what you're there to do as a councillor. But when you get to County Hall, you'll realise what I said is that you're a councillor for the whole of the county, and you have to adopt sort of a whole county approach, because you're fighting for Durham County Council, Durham County, against all the other counties with the government, and sort of you have a wider perspective. That was basically the brunt of my comment. There's nothing you've said which isn't absolutely valid, and God bless you. Keep saying it. Doesn't mean that Labour Party needs to chuck me out, man.
Can I answer that question straight from Chris that's come in again? I've got to ask again, some towns and villages have had more spent in 1 year than has been for 10 years in other villages since the unitary authority was formed. What do the panel think that the people who lived in those villages should feel about the county council? Thanks again. I think that's it's an incredibly important question, and if we don't address it, then where's the echo come from? Oh, we're back. So if we don't address that, then what are we going to do? From my point of view, what should people in those villages think? They should have been told. They should have been consulted on all these things, and they should have been in the position where someone is speaking to them, whether that's their county councillor or their parish councillor, and we should have been open and honest about the crippling effects of austerity and these choices that we had to make. Now, unitary authorities as well, that's something I'm not really a particular expert on. But a lot of people tell me that they feel that since it went unitary authority, which was, again, a national government push, things haven't been as good, things haven't been as easy, their concerns haven't been as easily addressed. We need more devolution. We need greater levels of devolution. We need local people making local decisions. I'm all for, as you know, John, I campaigned for this within Sedgefield CLP to have participatory budgeting, which I know Simon was very keen on doing as well, but it just seems to have disappeared for whatever reason, whether that's because of the local campaign forum or whatever. I don't really understand. But that is the way that you can't not communicate with your communities and expect your community to come with you. You just can't. If something's difficult, imagine if you live in a house and you're just like, right, and I hate the household, national analogy, but it does work actually locally because they do have household budgets. Local budgets are relatively similar. If you speak to someone in your own house and you just start making decisions and you don't tell them why you're making them, all of a sudden, yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that. Actually, we can't do that anymore. And you don't speak to the person you live with about how that will affect them and what the problem is, then of course it's going to breed resentment. And that's what's happening at the moment. I think that we aren't explaining to people how the national cuts are absolutely crippling local societies, how council tax is incredibly unfair, and that should have been a Labour Party national policy to scrap that system, move to a land value tax or something a lot better. That should have been national policy for a long time. And we should be telling this, and locally we can disagree with national Labour policy absolutely easily. And, for me, the Labour Party is only local because I totally don't recognise what's going on at the top of the Labour Party at the moment, because it isn't anything to do with the Labour Party. So, no one's been asked, are they? So it's exactly the same as Labour Party members feel about the Labour Party policy at the moment. We're not being asked about anything. That's how local residents feel about everything. We're not being asked, and we're not even having the problems explained.
The reason that participatory budgeting isn't in the offer that we're doing is that when it floated as a possible policy at the meeting of candidates, it didn't secure 100% support. So that doesn't mean that it's off the table or that it won't be implemented. It just means that we weren't going to go into an election with a policy which wasn't adopted. It wasn't sort of the decision of the entire candidate body. And that's how the Labour group works, that we sort of get things together. And sometimes things that you want fall by the wayside.
I do think we'll live to regret that.
Sort of, I think it would have been a good election pitch, but these things happen. The second is that I absolutely believe that we have to get better at consultation. There's too much that sort of we sit away, we develop a brilliant policy, and then we go to people and we say, what do you think of this policy? And by that time, we're so far down the road that sort of when people say, well, I hate that bit, and then why can't we do this, and why can't we do that? And we've thought of all those questions, and sort of they don't work. And so we say, oh, well, that doesn't work, and that doesn't work. And people feel terribly rejected, and they feel that we're forcing through and that we weren't going to listen anyway. We've got to get much better at involving people in the early stages of consultations. But what I will say is this, Paul, there's an awful lot of post-hoc outrage, because people don't take any interest in things. They couldn't care less about it. They don't think it applies to them. And then something's happening and they say, oh, I hate this. What's all this? And there's people have got, because people are asked to comment and contribute. And when they're asked, they've got to be responsible citizens. And when we ask people to tell us, then they've got to tell us. And we've had consultations on major things, and sort of, we've had 40 people reply from a county of 500,000 people. And so I think you're absolutely right. There's an awful lot of work to be done on engagement and engaging with people, listening to what they have to say, and then creating a policy which does them. And sort of the truth of the matter is that I'm a cabinet support member now. I would hope that if I get re-elected, I will sort of have a voice in the executive. And sort of, if that's the case, you can absolutely be assured that I am shouting very loudly for participatory budgeting, and I am shouting as loudly as I can for better engagement with people. Because you're right, it's about telling people and being honest with people when you can't do things. And sort of, and when people are properly involved, they come to the decisions for themselves. And you've just got to trust that. I agree with what you're saying.
And a perfect example of that is the situation with the leisure centre in Bishop Auckland, Woodhouse, whatever. You know, there was a massive consultation on that, and now there's been a decision made, and now there's a petition against the decision. And a lot of the people you're engaging with, those people who are protesting the decision, not even aware that there was a consultation in the first place. I think the council has to take some responsibility for making sure it is communicating effectively with people, but at the same time, people need to pay attention to what the council is doing, and so it's a two-way street, I think. Anyway, on that bombshell, clip that out and have me the most hated person in Woodhouse.
Laura,
Yeah,
you're going to swear before we go, because Anne really wants you to.
Anne's been on fire tonight. I've really enjoyed Anne's comments. So for Anne, I need something relevant to swear about. Boris Johnson's a dickhead. There you are.
Yeah, well done.
Is that the best you can do?
No, I can do far better, but I'm trying to be good.
We could beep it out later, couldn't we?
We could.
And yet, we never do.
Everybody, I'm going to interrupt here. Aren't these fabulous people? Aren't they just wonderful, wonderful people? The people who come on to some of them come trying to pick a fight, and at the end of it, they just look at these four people and they say, "It's me to pick a fight because I fall out with everybody." But these four people are just wonderful. God bless you for what you contribute. God bless you for the common sense you do. And you're all going to be here next week. And listeners, you're going to be the ones who choose what we talk about. God bless you. Thank you.